March 15, 2019, Budapest, Hungary. The bullet tore through Victor Kruger's shoulder at 3:47 p.m. 300 crew members watched Arnold's stunt double get shot. Most expected screaming, panic, blood everywhere. Instead, Victor calmly reached into his jacket, pulled out a field dressing kit nobody knew he carried, and began treating his own wound, in perfect Hungarian. While explaining ballistic trajectory to confused medics, the CIA had been hunting the ghost of Berlin for 30 years. The man who walked out of East Germany with enough state secrets to start wars. The operative who simply vanished. Agent Sarah Chen was watching the live feed when Victor's calm, methodical response triggered facial recognition software. After 3 decades, she'd found him. The bullet wasn't an accident. The calm response wasn't shock. Victor Kruger had been living in plain sight, one step ahead of death. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 24 hours earlier, Victor Kruger had been worried about Maya's audition callback for the Marvel film. Now, as Budapest's emergency room fluorescence buzzed overhead, he calculated exit routes while a surgeon extracted bullet fragments from muscles that had stopped flinching at pain decades ago. Remarkable tissue density, Dr. Kovacs muttered in Hungarian, probing the wound. Like armor. Victor's smile never wavered. 25 years of Hollywood stunts had given him the perfect cover story for a body marked by violence. Every scar had a film credit, every break had paperwork. The CIA would find medical records showing exactly what they'd expect from Arnold's longtime double, a man who'd absorbed punishment for a living. Occupational hazard, Victor replied, switching to accented English. Arnold throws me off buildings. I heal fast. The doctor laughed, but Victor caught the nurse's expression. She'd heard his Hungarian earlier, too fluent, too precise. Native speakers recognized their own. He filed her face away, already planning how to discourage questions. His phone buzzed. Maya's contact photo lit the screen, her radiant smile at last year's Cannes premiere, when she'd thanked him for believing in her dreams. She had no idea her adoptive father's dreams involved staying invisible long enough to keep breathing. Dad? Someone posted a video of you getting shot. Are you okay? The internet. Victor's jaw tightened. In 1989, the Stasi's greatest fear was losing files. Now every bystander carried surveillance equipment. Just work, little star. Prop malfunction. I'm fine. You're in a hospital. Routine. Home tomorrow. He kept his voice steady, paternal. The man she knew wouldn't worry her with details. I'm flying back from L.A. No, your meetings are too important. Trust your old man. He ended the call before she could argue. Maya's career was everything she'd worked for, everything he'd sacrificed to give her. A normal life, clean papers, a future without looking over her shoulder. Outside his window, Budapest's skyline had changed dramatically since 1989. When he'd last walked these streets, the city still breathed Soviet concrete and whispered surveillance. Now glass towers reflected prosperity the old regime never imagined. But some things never changed. The Danube still carried secrets to the Black Sea, and ghosts still walked among the living. Victor's fingers found the scar along his ribs, not from any stunt, but from a KGB interrogation in Prague, 1987. The information he'd stolen that night was worth enough to buy his daughter's future. State secrets had currency even after states fell. Especially then. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hello, Victor. The voice spoke German. Berlin accent. Victor's blood temperature dropped 10 degrees. You have the wrong number. Do I? You handled that bullet well. Just like Budapest, 1989, remember? The rooftop? Victor remembered everything. Dmitry Kozlov, Soviet military intelligence. A man who'd shot 3 people that night and would have made it 4 if Victor hadn't put a knife between his ribs first. Apparently not deep enough. I died in Berlin, Victor said quietly. So did I. Yet, here we are. Both of us found new lives, new names. But only one of us found something worth protecting. The line went dead. Victor stared at the phone, calculations accelerating. Dmitry had survived, found him, knew about Maya. The shot today wasn't random malfunction. It was a message, a demonstration. I can reach you anywhere. Dr. Kovacs returned with discharge papers. No complications. But Mr. Kruger, this injury pattern, he hesitated. I've seen similar wounds. Military medicine was my specialty before civilians. This bullet was meant to send a message, not kill. Victor signed the papers with a hand steady as marble. In Hollywood, everything's choreographed, doctor. Even the accidents. He walked out of the hospital into Budapest's evening chill. Across the street, a woman in a dark coat photographed him with professional telephoto equipment. Not paparazzi, wrong equipment, wrong position. Intelligent surveillance. His CIA file was active again. Victor had built his ordinary world with infinite patience. Arnold's reliable double, Maya's devoted father. A man who carried medical supplies and spoke too many languages but never quite enough to raise questions. A ghost who'd learned to live by becoming someone else's shadow. Now that world was cracking. Dimitri's call meant 30 years of careful invisibility was ending. The CIA's facial recognition meant his legend was compromised. And Maya, brilliant, trusting Maya, was about to discover her father's greatest performance had been playing human. Victor pulled out a burner phone from his jacket's inner pocket, muscle memory accessing tools he'd hoped never to need again. His fingers hesitated over numbers he'd memorized but never called. In Hollywood, when a stunt went wrong, they reset and tried again. But real life didn't offer second takes, only consequences. He dialed. It's me, after 30 years. Yes, I know what that means. I need an extraction protocol for my daughter. Tonight, the ghost of Berlin was about to stop hiding. The voice that answered spoke Russian-accented English from a secure line somewhere in Switzerland. Victor Kruger is dead. You told us yourself in 1994. Not dead. Dormant. Victor watched the CIA photographer across the street adjust her telephoto lens. Codename Phoenix. Authentication, Red October 779. A pause. Computer keys clicking. Authentication confirmed. Christ, Victor. 3 decades of silence and now you surface with an extraction request? My daughter's been compromised. She doesn't know who I am, doesn't know what I was. I need her moved to safety before... Before what? You haven't given us intelligence since the Berlin Wall fell. You've been Hollywood's favorite stuntman playing dress-up with Arnold. Why should we burn resources on your family drama? Victor's fingers tightened on the phone. In the reflection of a shop window, he watched the photographer pack her equipment. Moving position. They'd have surveillance from multiple angles within minutes. Because I still have the Prometheus files. Silence stretched across international fiber optic cables. The Prometheus files. Soviet biological weapons research, weapons inspector locations, NATO infiltration networks. Information worth toppling governments even 30 years later. His insurance policy, his daughter's college fund, his leverage against a world that forgot old spies until it needed their secrets. Those files were destroyed when... I lied. Complete copies. Digitized. Encrypted. Hidden. Victor started walking, muscle memory choosing routes with multiple exits. Someone from my past is using my daughter as bait. They know about Maya because they've been watching, waiting. If they take her, they'll trade her life for what's in my head. The Kozlov problem? Victor's step faltered. They knew about Dimitri. Had known, and never warned him. How long have you been aware? Dmitry Kozlov surfaced in Prague 6 months ago. Former Jew, now freelance. We flagged him because of his connection to you, but you were inactive, protected by your Hollywood cover. We assumed he was after financial targets. Assumptions kill people. Victor turned down a narrow street lined with medieval buildings that had survived Nazis, Soviets, and now hosted boutique hotels for tourists who photographed history without understanding its weight. He's been patient, planned this. The shooting wasn't meant to kill me, it was meant to activate protocols, get me to make contact, smoke me out. And now you've done exactly what he wanted. Victor stopped walking. Across the narrow street, in a cafe window, a man lowered his newspaper. Slavic features, expensive suit, professional stillness. Not Dmitri, but one of his people. They'd been hurting him since he left the hospital. I need a clean extraction for Maya. Tonight, before she lands in Budapest. She's already in the air. Left Lax 3 hours ago. Victor's blood chilled. Maya had lied. She wasn't flying back tomorrow. She was already coming. Into a trap he'd spent 25 years trying to avoid. Flight information. Now, Lufthansa 441 connects through Munich. Arrives Budapest 11:47 local time. Victor checked his watch. 6 hours. The photographer, the surveillance, the man in the cafe, they weren't here to take him. They were here to ensure he stayed put until Maya arrived. Dmitri knew exactly what would happen. Victor would go to the airport. Dmitri would be waiting. And Maya would become collateral in a war she didn't know existed. I need backup. Clean team, airport pickup, safe house coordinates. Victor, you've been out of the game since Clinton was president. You're a stuntman who speaks too many languages. This isn't your world anymore. It was never my world. But it's the only one I know. Victor thought of Maya's laugh, the way she'd hug him after successful takes on set, how she'd made him promise to retire soon so they could travel together. She thinks her biological father died a war hero. She thinks I'm just the man who adopted her, taught her English, helped her dream of Hollywood. If Dmitri takes her, if he tells her what I really am, what are you really, Victor? After 30 years of Arnold's shadow, do you even know? Victor studied his reflection in a storefront window. Gray-bearded, lean, carrying himself like a man comfortable with violence despite wearing a medical sling. Maya had his eyes, the only feature they shared, the only hint that love sometimes transcended blood. I'm a father, he said quietly. Everything else is just cover identity. He ended the call and removed the battery from the burner phone. The man in the cafe was gone. The surveillance net was tightening. Dmitri's people would follow him to the airport, but they'd also expect him to run, to activate escape protocols, to become the ghost of Berlin again. Instead, Victor pulled out his regular phone and called the one person who might help him disappear in plain sight. Arnold, it's Victor. I need a favor, a big one. The game was beginning. Maya was in the air, and somewhere in Budapest's shadows, Dmitri Kozlov was counting down to reunion. Arnold's voice boomed through the phone speaker, unmistakably warm despite the distance. Victor! How's the shoulder? I heard about the accident. Stupid prop masters, I tell them 1,000 times. Arnold, listen carefully. I need you to fly to Budapest. Tonight, silence. In 30 years of friendship, Victor had never asked for anything beyond professional courtesy. Arnold Schwarzenegger knew the difference between a favor and desperation. What's wrong? Victor chose his words like diffusing a bomb. Someone's using Maya to get to me. Old business. Very old. I need to disappear in plain sight, and you're the only shadow big enough to hide behind. Maya's in danger? Yes, no hesitation. I'll charter a jet, 4 hours. Victor's throat tightened. In a world built on lies, Arnold's immediate trust felt like absolution. Thank you. Victor, whatever this old business is, we handle it together. The line went dead. Victor pocketed the phone and started walking toward his apartment, the weight of 30 years pressing against his shoulders like stage rigging. Arnold would come. Maya would land in 6 hours. And somewhere in this ancient city, Dmitri Kozlov was orchestrating a reunion that would either free Victor from his past or destroy everything he'd built to escape it. His apartment building stood unchanged, communist-era concrete softened by ivy and modern security systems. Victor climbed 4 flights, muscle memory navigating stairs he'd walked thousands of times as a man who fixed motorcycles and dated the occasional stunt woman. A man who worried about Maya's auditions and sent flowers on her birthday. A man who existed only because Victor Kruger had murdered his real identity in a Berlin safe house 30 years ago. The apartment smelled like the coffee Maya had made during her last visit, when she'd practiced her Marvel audition lines while he repaired Arnold's motorcycle jacket. Normal domestic moments that had felt like the greatest performance of his career. Victor moved to his bedroom closet, fingers finding the loose floorboard behind his winter boots. Beneath layers of wood and insulation lay a waterproof case untouched for decades. Inside, 3 passports, currency from 7 countries, a Sig Sauer P226 with 2 magazines and a single photograph. The photo showed a younger Victor in East German uniform standing beside a woman with dark hair and Maya's smile. Dr. Elena Petrov, theoretical physicist, Maya's biological mother, and the reason Victor had betrayed everything he'd once believed. Elena had been developing weapons that could kill millions. Victor had been assigned to protect the research. Instead, he'd fallen in love with the scientist and stolen her daughter when the project went dark. Elena died believing Victor was a war hero who'd saved her research from Soviet corruption. Maya grew up believing her father had died protecting state secrets. The truth was simpler and more damning. Victor had killed Elena's research partner, destroyed 2 years of weapons development, and kidnapped a 3-year-old girl because love made cowards of even the most trained killers. Victor's hands trembled as he loaded the Sig Sauer, not from fear, but from the muscle memory of violence returning like a foreign language suddenly recalled. The ghost of Berlin had been fluent in death. Victor Kruger, stuntman and father, had almost forgotten. His phone rang. Maya's number. "Dad, the flight's delayed. Won't land until 2 a.m. I'm so worried about you." Delayed how? Victor's voice carried an edge Maya had never heard. "Mechanical problems in Munich. They're switching aircraft." She paused. "Dad, you sound strange. Are you really okay?" Victor closed his eyes. Dmitri was moving pieces on the board, controlling timing, ensuring all players arrived when he wanted them. The delay meant Arnold would land first. Maya would arrive when Dmitri was ready. "I'm fine, little star. Just tired. I'll pick you up at the airport." "You sure?" "With your shoulder?" "I'm sure." After she hung up, Victor sat on his bed holding the photograph of Elena. Maya had inherited her mother's brilliance, her passion for performance, her ability to light rooms with presence alone. She'd also inherited her mother's trust in people who carried weapons professionally. Victor's secure phone buzzed. Text message from a number he didn't recognize. "Coffee shop, Vassy Street. 1 hour. Come alone, or Maya's delay becomes permanent. D." The message deleted itself 3 seconds later. Victor holstered the Sig Sauer and checked his watch. Arnold's jet was 2 hours out. Maya was trapped in Munich. Dmitri was finally ready to collect 30 years of accumulated interest on betrayal. Victor studied his reflection one final time. Gray beard, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. For 25 years he'd been Arnold's shadow, Maya's father, a man who existed in the spaces between other people's stories. Tonight, the ghost of Berlin was stepping back into the light. He locked the apartment and walked into the Budapest evening, carrying weapons and wearing the face of a man who'd learned that sometimes love required becoming a monster. The past had returned with a phone call and a photograph, shattering the careful equilibrium of Victor Kruger's ordinary world. There would be no going back. Victor walked through Budapest's evening streets, like a man approaching his own execution. Every storefront reflection showed him searching for surveillance. Every shadow might conceal Dmitri's people, yet he maintained the measured pace of someone heading to meet an old friend, rather than confront a ghost who should have died 30 years ago. The coffee shop on Vassy Street occupied the ground floor of a Habsburg-era building, its windows glowing amber against the darkening sky. Tourist couples shared dessert at outdoor tables, their laughter mixing with the distant sound of a street musician's violin. Victor chose a seat with clear sightlines to 3 exits, his back to the wall, the Sig Sauer's weight a cold comfort against his ribs. Dmitri arrived precisely on time. Victor recognized him immediately despite 3 decades of weathering. Tall, lean, moving with the predatory grace of a man who'd survived by being faster than his enemies. Expensive Italian suit, silver hair perfectly groomed, hands that remained steady as he pulled out the opposite chair. The scar along his jawline, Victor's parting gift from their Berlin encounter, had faded to a thin white line. "You look old, Victor." Survival ages a man. Victor kept his hands visible on the table, though his fingers remained within reach of his weapon. "You look successful." Dmitri smiled without warmth. "Switzerland is kind to men with useful skills. Private military consulting pays better than ideology ever did." He gestured to the waitress, ordered coffee in fluent Hungarian. "You've been harder to track." Victor Kruger, motorcycle mechanic turned stuntman, very pedestrian cover identity. It served its purpose. Did it? Dmitri pulled out a tablet, swiped to a photograph of Maya on a red carpet, radiant in designer evening wear. Beautiful girl. Elena's eyes, but stronger, more ambitious. She's going to be quite famous, I think, if she lives long enough. Victor's hands didn't move, but something shifted in his eyes that made nearby tourists unconsciously look away. You have my attention. I've always had your attention. 25 years of watching, Victor. Your daughter's school plays, her first headshots, that lovely apartment you bought her in Los Angeles. I could have taken her any time, but where's the artistry in that? Dmitri sipped his coffee, savoring Victor's stillness. No, I wanted you to build something beautiful first, something worth destroying. What do you want? The Prometheus files. Complete archive, decryption keys, everything you stole from Volkov's lab. Dmitri's voice carried the patient tone of a man discussing weather. 30 years of interest has accumulated, Victor. Certain governments would pay extraordinary amounts for Soviet biological weapons research, particularly the delivery mechanisms. Victor had rehearsed this conversation in nightmares for decades. The files were destroyed in Berlin. Please. Dmitri showed another photograph. Victor entering his apartment building that morning, the same building where he'd hidden the encrypted drives beneath his bedroom floor. You're a planner, Victor. Always were. The ghost of Berlin doesn't steal state secrets without insurance policies. At a table across the cafe, a woman in a dark coat lowered her newspaper. Slavic features, professional makeup that couldn't quite conceal surveillance training. She wasn't looking at them, but her positioning allowed visual coverage of their entire conversation. Not Dmitri's people. Something else. American intelligence, maybe. Victor filed the detail away while keeping his focus on immediate threats. The files are worthless now, Victor said carefully. 30-year-old weapons research, targeting networks that don't exist anymore. You underestimate modern innovation. Volkov's viral delivery systems combined with current biotechnology, Dmitri shrugged. Certain non-state actors find historical precedent quite inspiring. They're prepared to pay 9 figures for inspiration. Victor's phone buzzed. Text message from Maya, Dad, stuck in Munich longer. New flight at midnight. Miss you? Dmitri glanced at Victor's screen. Mechanical delays are so unpredictable. Fortunately, I have contacts in aviation maintenance. Your daughter's safety depends entirely on our business concluding satisfactorily. She's innocent in this. So was Elena. So were the 1,200 people in Prague when Volkov's prototype was accidentally released. Innocence is irrelevant. Dmitri leaned forward. You have something I need. I have something you value more than your life. Simple mathematics. Victor studied Dmitri's face, reading micro-expressions like a language he'd hoped to forget. Confidence, yes, but also something else. Desperation carefully concealed behind professional calm. Someone was pressuring Dmitri, forcing this play after decades of patience. Who's buying? Victor asked quietly. Dmitri's smile flickered for just an instant. That's not your concern. It is if you're being hunted too. The woman with the newspaper stood, dropped money on her table, and walked toward the cafe's rear exit. Her movement pattern suggested training, CIA or similar services. Victor's resurrection was drawing attention from multiple intelligence agencies. The game was more complex than Dmitri had anticipated. 24 hours, Victor. The files for your daughter's continued existence. I'll contact you with exchange details. Dmitri rose from the table. And Victor, don't involve your Hollywood friends. Arnold Schwarzenegger is many things, but bulletproof isn't one of them. Dmitri walked away, leaving Victor alone with cold coffee and the weight of impossible choices. Around him, tourists continued their evening conversations, oblivious to the fact that 30-year-old state secrets had just been negotiated over dessert and espresso. Victor's phone rang. Arnold's number. I'm landing in 1 hour. Where do you need me? Victor closed his eyes. 30 years of careful peace dissolving like sugar in rain. Airport pickup. Terminal 2. And Arnold, come armed.